Hey everyone, I recently had the opportunity to interview Amir Berenjian of REM5 Virtual Reality Laboratory. REM5 is located in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, and it is essentially a place where you can come and get in VR and not have to worry about the hassle of setting up hardware or software. It's a venue where people can come for entertainment or for corporate and business purposes. Amir is an industry expert in the field of VR, having founded REM5 with his partner, Travis Hoyan. Now, before I show you the interview, I want to apologize in advance for the audio quality. I placed the mic too far away, but in order to fix that, I carefully subtitled the entire video. So without further ado, here's the interview.
Hey everyone, my name is Matt Foreman. I am a creative technologist at Pixel Farm. I work with interactive technology, including virtual reality. And today I'm joined here by Amir Berenjian of REM5 Virtual Reality Laboratory, which is where we are at today. So I guess just to start off, Amir, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, as well as REM5 and how that came to be?
For sure. Thanks for having me today. My background is actually not in tech at all. My professional background is not in tech at all. My background is actually corporate finance and investment banking. I went to school for corporate finance and spent most of my career there. I tried high-end virtual reality for the first time about 3 years ago, and frankly just became obsessed with it. It's really easy to start drinking Kool-Aid in terms of the potential for immersive technology to be the next computer platform after mobile once you try it. It's kind of a cliche saying, but seeing is believing.
Totally agree. I had a similar experience.
Yep. And once I tried it, I couldn't kick the thought of VR. Got together with a buddy of mine, Travis, and started looking at the industry and say, okay, as not having traditional tech backgrounds, what problems can we help solve for the industry? Because when we looked at the industry, this latest wave was only about 3 years old with Facebook's acquisition of Oculus in 2016. As we looked at the industry, the three big buckets that we looked at as problems were, one is just accessibility. This stuff's really expensive, it takes up a lot of space, it's clunky, it's hard to operate. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is understanding. Most people today, outside of maybe a few square miles in Silicon Valley, most people just think VR is for kids gaming or it makes them sick. And then the last bucket is content. Your iPhone is just a hunk of metal without the apps on it. So with VR, it's just a hunk of metal plugged into the wall without meaningful content. You really have a reason to pick it up. So when we built REM5, we had those three kind of challenges in mind. And so to start, we built out a facility to solve the accessibility issue. We had 8,000 square feet here in St. Louis Park. We have the highest headsets that exist in the world today. And when users come in, we provide a turnkey solution for them, so they don't have to deal with any of the software updates, the stuff not working, and it's just ready to rock and roll. The second piece of our business is a consulting business where we work with companies to help them understand immersive technology and use cases outside of just other kids and gaming. And then the last bucket is our studio that's starting to build content to solve the lack of content issue in the space today.
Cool, so in a lot of ways, REM5 is like an oasis for content. You guys have the hardware and people can just come here, whether it's for entertainment or corporate purposes, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're the service provider, right? We make it easy. With a lot of companies and a lot of different industries, I'm trying to think of a cliche example where you might have the resources to do it in-house, but it's way easier to just leave it up to the experts.
Right.
So whether you want to just have fun, we can do that, or one simple example is architecture engineering. VR is a complete layup to use as a visualization tool. You're already doing all the work natively in 3D. Let's just toss on a headset to actually view what it is that you're working on. And these companies have the resources to do it in-house, but it's way easier for them to just send us a file, show up with all of their clients, and have a turnkey solution ready.
Exactly, so a lot of it's about accessibility, right?
That's right.
Cool. That's right. So I wanted to ask you kind of specifically today about virtual reality as a disruptive technology. So I guess my first question, pretty obvious, do you think that virtual reality is a disruptive technology?
Yeah, I wouldn't be sitting here today if I didn't basically live for VR being disruptive.
Yeah, so in a lot of ways it disrupted your life, in a good way.
That's right. That's right. Some days good, some days bad. But I mean, really kind of what we come back to with VR is if you look at VR's unique capabilities, there are two things. One is democratize experiences, and two, the visualization tool, like the example with architecture and engineering. And then if you combine its ability to democratize experiences with experiential learning being the most impactful way to learn, you theoretically have yourself the most powerful learning medium that exists. So when you apply that concept in those simple lenses to virtually any industry, you can pretty quickly find your way to seeing a path towards immediate disruption, which is fascinating. What other medium is that?
Right, exactly. It's a medium that completely immerses you. Basically.
Yeah, and that may sound crazy, but if we were sitting here 20 years ago having the same conversation and we were talking about mobile, there's probably a lot of people who are like, nah, like maybe, but I don't really see it. And fast forward to today, it's disrupted every industry.
Yeah.
Right? The way we work, the way we learn, play, socialize, all aspects of it.
Yeah, and I would say there were a lot of skeptics at first, but I think people are beginning to understand that VR is here to stay.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, for people, like let's say executives working at companies that are making a lot of these decisions, whether to invest in immersive technology or not, it's a little bit of an uphill battle because VR has been the next big thing for about 100 years. And it rears its head once a decade, but the difference this time around is the computing power has finally caught up to the dreams and aspirations of what VR can do.
Right, not only the computing power, but the miniaturization of hardware. I remember looking up some old VR concepts where it's a pole coming down from the ceiling with literally 2 CRT monitors in it that pan around. And I would say it's come a long way since then. In some ways, I'd say VR has disrupted the hardware industry in terms of, spurring smaller displays and more lightweight technology.
Totally.
Yeah, totally.
And at the end of the day, I mean, if we're focused on disrupting enterprise, you have to have hardware that's scalable.
Right.
And we're still not quite there yet. But today versus 5 years ago, we at least have a clear path to hardware that is scalable.
Sure. And in terms of scalability, what exactly do you mean when you say that word?
So, for instance, here we have 8,000 square feet. We're running HTC Vive Pros, which is the highest consumer device or enterprise device that exists in the world today. And we have 12 of these setups in here right now, and we try not to move them, basically. Right. And we're experts in this industry. So if a company calls up, XYZ company calls us and says, hey, will you bring over some VR rigs so we can do some training? We might go set up 2 or 4 headsets, and that's going to take us hours to do and calibrate. It might not work that day, but it might work well, and it's kind of a gamble.
Yeah.
But when you have 2 or 4 headsets, you have no throughput. So if you're going to try to train 1,000 employees, how do you actually manage that? The sheer logistics of it just doesn't work. Now, fast forward to today, we have devices like this bad boy right here, the Oculus Go. It's completely standalone, right? It has its limitations in terms of computing power, where you really only have 3 degrees of freedom, so it works good for like a 360 video experience.
Where you're just looking around in one spot.
It's seated, right?
Yeah.
You're looking around. We can, like tomorrow we're going out to a company with 25 degrees and we'll be set up in a matter of minutes. So, boom, now, step forward to just a couple months ago, you have the Oculus Quest, and now you kind of have the best of both worlds. You have scalability, so I can show up at a company and set up a handful of these in a conference room in a matter of minutes.
Right.
But you do have compromised computing power.
Yes.
So it's kind of that trade-off.
Yep.
But just an illustration of we're moving forward.
Yeah. And just to be clear with our viewers, both of these headsets have computers built into them. And as Amir was saying, at first, this one has 3 degrees of freedom tracking, meaning that it can rotate, it knows which direction your head is facing. This one has 6 degrees of freedom, meaning that it can pan and tilt, know where your head is pointing, and it also knows where your head is located in the room, meaning that if you had this on, you could look around objects. If you were, for example, using it for architecture, pre-visualization, you could actually walk through a room and look around it as if you were actually in it. And the computer is built in, and while it is convenient, there is a trade-off in terms of processing, like Amir was talking about. So I guess, based on your personal experience at REM5, what industries have you seen that have really jumped on VR as a technology and that are really making progressive products?
Yeah, so we've spent a little bit of time there talking about the hardware. The next big equation is the software, because at the end of the day, these are just hunks of metal, right? So where does the content exist, and where does the high quality content exist? Which is a whole other question.
Yeah,
very different question.
Yeah.
So one area that we've started is actually education, K-12 education. That's an area where it's not enterprise, but related, I guess, where there's a lot of high quality content, because it kind of blurs the entertainment world as well. So, like, is a tour of the White House or tour of the Anne Frank house, is that education or entertainment? Or creating art in VR, is that education or is that entertainment? Right. So what we've been able to do is go and find a lot of this content that was kind of built for entertainment, and spin it into a more educational programming. So what we've done is taken content. So let's take the art one, for example. And we've built programming around it to teach kids how to do rapid prototyping. In VR as a 3D visualization.
So you've held classes here.
We've held a lot of classes in the house here. We're working with schools during the day and after school. So that's an area where I would say that we're probably one of the leaders in the world right now in K-12 education implementation for VR. Because we've solved 2 things. One is accessibility and that throughput issue. So if you bring a class here, you can get an entire class engaged. Versus if you're a school, you have maybe 1 headset, which is cool and amazing. How do you actually roll that out? And then 2, we built the curriculum around VR content, which is a lot more. So that's worked really well. And then in terms of enterprise, I would say it's really, really fragmented right now in terms of what people are doing in enterprise. Because, as you know, like VR, we have these big hopes and dreams for VR and what this tech can do. But where people have found the most success today is finding like very niche applications that they can justify immediate ROI. So I'd say the biggest win in the industry right now is Walmart. And they have rolled out 16,000 headsets. So there's Oculus Go headset here because it's very scalable. It's like 10 in the pocket seconds. And what they've done is they've looked at their business and tried to find areas where there's lack of scalability, there's lack of consistency, there's a lot of bias in the system in terms of training and decision making. And so they have a platform where the middle manager will put on a headset for 15 minutes and go through a series of simulations where they have to make decisions. Some dealing with customers and some dealing with their peers. When you think about it from a management perspective at Walmart, now you have black and white data on your mid-manager's decision-making abilities. No bias in the system, 100% consistency.
You actually receive feedback.
And it's black and white feedback. It's just big data. And so they're using that to help them to differentiate who should be elevated and who needs to be.
And I think the company behind that is Striver, right? And they do work for several other companies working with them to develop these training experiences, right?
Yep, that's right. And Striver, I believe, got their start. They came out of Stanford. I believe they were founders came out of Stanford, but they got their start with quarterback training, actually football.
Really?
Because if you think about it, the same concepts apply to corporate training as a quarterback. Right?
Yeah.
You need to go through reps, and you need data.
Yeah.
So what better tool than VR? You can put a quarterback through 1,000 reps, and now I know exactly what decisions you made, how long it took you to make them, and go and identify your exact deficiencies.
And not only that, but the training is more realistic and immersive because you're literally putting someone into the exact situation.
That's right.
And that situation can be repeated for everyone who experiences it.
That's right.
So in a way, VR is disruptive across basically any application that requires training.
That's right.
Yeah. So we've covered education, sports, various corporate training. Do you have any predictions on other areas VR could be used for training at all, or any ideas about some other industries that would maybe benefit from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's really limitless. I know there's a lot happening in healthcare right now.
Right.
If you think about what we always go back to is, why does a flight simulator make sense? Right, just generally speaking. For a lot of the reasons we just talked about, scalability, safety, all these things. And so if you look at other areas that are very high risk, like a brain surgeon or a surgery, right? I mean, we can simulate a lot of those things in a very low risk environment.
Right.
And doing it in VR is emotionally very close to the real thing, where it forces you to make real decisions. And there's a lot of work being done on the biometric side, where it's like, all right, if I'm watching on a 2D screen, or even a series of screens that are attempting to immerse me, you're still not going to activate the same parts of the brain and get your heart rate up like you would in the VR experience, which is much more similar to real world.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not to sound cliche, but it's like the sky's the limit. If you pick up company right now, and or up industry, we could whiteboard 150 different ideas exactly how we are going to disruptive to that business. One area that we're spending a lot of time here at REM5 is in the empathy space, the diversity and inclusion space.
Right.
Which is an area that VR provides a unique opportunity to walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. It also creates an opportunity for an individual to be in an uncomfortable situation, but do it in a safe way. So if you think about it, there's really no other way you can accomplish those.
Right.
And so we're doing a lot of work there from corporate clients ranging all the way to law enforcement.
Yeah.
Police officers, helping police officers start to think about their unconscious bias, which is pretty powerful.
That is cool. Yeah. So in some of this discussion, it sounds like VR is disrupting the health industry in a lot of ways, as far as mental health is concerned. Do you think it can be used as a tool that can promote mental health in various ways?
What do you mean by mental health?
I mean, diversity training, empathy training, things like that.
Yeah.
Things that promote positive mental well-being.
Yeah, totally, 100%. I mean, all the way to something as simple as driving awareness to mental health issues. We created a 360 video experience that when you put on a headset, you're just a passive third party in conversation with two people that are, where one of the individuals is opening up about their mental health issues. And so that can be a really tough, awkward conversation. And so doing it in VR is almost like exposure therapy, theoretically.
Right.
Yeah, so if I do it in VR, I'm part of this really kind of tough conversation. Theoretically, that should make the conversation in reality more palatable and easier for me to do. There's nothing
right.
We would never be. We're not proponents of saying VR is better than doing anything in reality.
Exactly.
But it's a potentially a bridge to get you to do things in reality that we need to do otherwise.
Sure, because I guess communications are conveyed in a more natural way. And on that subject, do you think VR has the potential to disrupt the communications industry in terms of speaking to someone from across the globe or connecting with people from different geographical locations.
100%. 100%. Yeah, it's. I mean, if you think about something as simple as Skype and how that's disruptive the way that I communicate with my grandma or kids when I'm out of town. Right now, it's just second nature.
Yeah.
20 years ago, that was a crazy idea.
Yeah. Video conferencing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years from now, is it going to be crazy that I can toss on this headset and play a game of checkers with my grandma on the other side of the world? I don't think so. That's that's possible today.
It's just not widespread.
That's a kinks to work out, but we'll get there. I mean, I just demoed an application that's for corporations to use for meetings, and I went in there and picked from about 20 different office type settings, from a boardroom to a room with just white walls. And the beauty of it is you have all of the tools at your disposal that you have in reality, except they're even more dynamic. So I'm pulling out post-it notes, writing on them, stamping them up on the wall. I can pull up my web browser, I can pull up a YouTube video, I can access all of the files on my desktop and just pull them up virtually. And the crazy thing, and this is one of the biggest, the light bulb went off for me a couple years ago when I was in a social VR application, and it was just avatars, right? It's just head, hands, and your audio. But what I didn't have full appreciation for is that we do most of our communication through what we're saying, so audibly, and then through our hands and head motion.
Body language.
You can communicate so much emotion that way that I don't need the full fidelity of your whole body to have a really deep connection with VR. It's kind of a scary thing to actually say.
Yeah.
But it's true.
Right. And I would agree with that because I've been in some multiplayer instances where someone's mic wasn't working, but I knew exactly what they were trying to tell me just by the way they were moving their bodies and pointing at something, or the way they would nod their head. Yeah.
It was crazy.
It is crazy. I know Facebook is starting to get into this with Facebook Horizon, and they are kind of trying. For those who don't know, it was mentioned earlier, but Facebook acquired Oculus, which is the manufacturer of these headsets, and they are going to be building something called Facebook Horizon. Do you have any insight on that, what that might look like, or any predictions?
I don't think we want to get started on Facebook VR. It's kind of bittersweet. Facebook has done a lot of positive things on the hardware side. They've been the leader in terms of investing in the tech, which is great for the industry as a whole. But overall, I would say they have pretty perverse incentives to making sure that the VR ecosystem works. My 2 cents, I'm not saying this is coming from them, but my 2 cents is that the whole acquisition of Oculus was a defensive strategy. They view VR as the next computing platform after mobile, and they want to own that ecosystem so that they can own the social platform on VR, which is a scary concept.
Right.
So given their poor history with data and how they handled it, so yeah, time will tell. But their goal is to have a billion people in headsets and using VR as basically the Facebook platform, except much more intimate and emotional connections between users.
Essentially moving Facebook from a two-dimensional monitor web browser to an immersive ecosystem.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So do you think we should be concerned about our privacy, our emotions, our conversations being tracked?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say it is actually pretty obvious.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about how many data points are available right now on you today, based on maybe just your online interactions.
Yeah, just things you click through.
Now, the amount of data is going to accelerate because they are tracking all of your movements essentially in this virtual environment, what decisions you're making, who you're interacting with, all of these things.
They'll probably even track where you're looking.
They will track where you're looking. And there's even been issues in terms of how these devices work, is they have front-facing cameras on them. So what's actually happening to that data? When I go and set this up, and it maps the room here, what's actually happening with that data? Is it sitting here locally on my device, or is it actually going and sitting on a server somewhere where Facebook has access to it?
Right.
Yeah, time will tell.
Yeah, some interesting issues to think about for sure. So, in terms of this being the next computing platform, do you think that augmented reality glasses will eventually replace our smartphones?
Yes, I think so. I'm not an AR expert. The tech is very different than VR. The use cases are also very different, but I think they're complementary. So I guess my personal opinion is that I think that right now the VR tech is more useful than the AR tech. And so VR is kind of ahead of AR. I think we'll hit a point here in the next 5 years where AR passes VR. And for those that don't know, AR is essentially where you're seeing the real world with the digital overlay. So like it has a display on the car or like a RoboCop display.
Right.
And so like in the enterprise world, what I would see is, let's say I'm training somebody on a piece of machinery. I'm probably going to use VR to train on the machinery, get my reps in. And then when I'm actually out on the floor, I'm probably using AR. So when I'm looking around, it's giving me all the diagnostics I want, or if I'm having an issue, I'm getting the directions and everything that are in my glasses. So they're working together, kind of under the same roof, with different use cases. And then who knows? I mean, it's so I think when we have VR kind of ahead of AR, I think AR will probably surpass VR for a little while. And then 10 years from now, they'll probably both deploy, maybe through a combined device, a combined piece of hardware.
Right, I kind of imagine a set of AR glasses that may have some sort of black cover that comes down, so you're just seeing a virtual.
Right.
Yeah, totally. Exactly.
The big, for AR, where I think it'll take a big step forward is when Apple gets into the game.
Yeah.
Which I think will probably be, they're saying like iPhone 2.
I believe that's what the rumors are.
So we'll see. I mean, now they have slowly, kind of quietly, but also loudly moved into the watch and now the AirPods, and don't underestimate the power of the AirPods in terms of how that plays a role in AR and VR. And the next step is to be on your face.
Yeah,
the front of your face.
Yeah, and even in the development that I do, it's apparent that Apple is investing heavily in augmented reality technologies. I mean, today, most people are probably familiar with AR on your phone or an iPad, something that's on your screen, but all of that technology applies to AR once it reaches glasses that we wear that overlay things onto the real world.
That's right. Yeah, today, I mean, I think people are turned off from it because they're kind of like, well, why would I use this on my phone or my iPad? It's really kind of a disconnected experience, but to your point, they're just building the tech in the background.
Exactly. And I would say they might expect it to reach a point where you're no longer carrying a smartphone in your pocket, but you're wearing glasses on your head. And as far as that goes, do you see virtual reality moving away from local hardware and onto a cloud computing platform? Because that might have some benefits in terms of reducing hardware weight.
100%. Yeah, that'll be another big piece of the puzzle in terms of accessibility. So to do really high-end VR experiences, you need a lot of memory power, which right now, I mean, a lot of these computers have video cards in them that are $1,000. And big, like just physically big. But with 5G rolling out, theoretically you can do a lot of that rendering in the cloud, which allows you to now be using a device like this or even smaller, and I'm not limited by the computing power that's built in here because I have full access to all of the Amazon farms around the world.
Exactly.
Actually, the computing that is being done. So 100%. We've tested some of that. It's not quite there yet. It's a little laggy, but it's just a matter of time. It's not yet.
Right. It's when. Just like VR. A lot of people thought it was going to be an if, but it turned out to be when. It's already when. All right. Well, I think that probably should wrap things up. But Amir, thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate your insight on all these topics, and it really gives some food for thought in a lot of areas.
Awesome. Thanks for
I hope you've enjoyed this interview. I thought Amir brought up some very interesting and thought-provoking topics about the VR industry moving forward. If you're local to the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, be sure to head on over to REM5 in St. Louis Park and check it out. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out the other videos on my channel and subscribe. Thank you.